I'm Emily Laidlaw, and full screen. And I'm so glad that you're taking your time today to join me, and let's see if we can learn together. We're going to work together. In February, I presented a workshop on simplifying syllables. And the truth is that it's hard to simplify syllables because syllables are complicated. It's one of the things we argue about as teachers. We expect a kindergartner to learn. Linguists argue about, and we still expect a kindergartner to learn. So there's a lot going on with syllables. In some ways, we can all feel that there are syllables in words, and we can have this feeling of understanding, but defining them and working within them is difficult. I want to not simplify the language of syllables necessarily, but simplify our attitude towards how we teach it, keeping our eye on the goal. That's always my objective here. And I know that we have to discuss the difficulties in order to get to, well, what was our goal? Last time in February, I went through a lot of details. I got some feedback on some questions that I do want to expand on some of those points. But for the most part, I don't want to rehash everybody's definition and why there's these differences, because I want today to be hands-on for us to get in and work with words and see what we can do. So that's my goal today. And please, if you have a question, please unmute yourself and say it. So the questions we deal with is, what do we really need to teach, and is there an easier way, and can we go faster? When we have students who come to us 2 years behind, 3 years behind, we know we need to go as slow as we have to. We know they need to get the foundations. But how slow is too slow, and what can we do to speed up the process? And a lot of us get bogged down with teaching syllables. I hear all the time from teachers, I don't want to do it wrong. And the fear of making a mistake keeps them from just stepping forward and really trying to change the way they think. And we ask our kids, don't be afraid of being wrong, right? Don't we always tell our kids, it's okay, be bold, make mistakes. That's how we learn. So we need to do that for ourselves. We want to be able to be bold, take risks, learn along with our kids, and move on. There was, I see teachers, I see teachers who say, oh, I just went through this training. I now know everything I need to know to teach this group of kids. And I'm thinking, there is basically not a student in 30 years that I haven't learned from. Every student helps me learn more about how to teach. So we're always learning. We modeled that for our kids. And you know what? I make mistakes all the time. I'll make a dozen today, I'm sure. Okay, so this is me. This is free. These are PayPal and Venmo. If you want to send me something, you may. I will accept it, although I really don't like that public school teachers have to pay out of pocket for what you need to teach. And as a business owner, as a tutor, it's like, okay, if you want to, that's great too. I'll take it. You know, it's a rough situation here in Hawaii. My husband's been furloughed for a year, so I keep trying to expand what I'm doing. So along those lines, I now have a website. I've been kind of just flying under the radar, word of mouth, and doing things. But I needed to get a little more. I hate marketing myself, but I have to do something. So that's my website on this side, either the link, or if you want to just grab your phone and scan it. And this is my new TPT store. I have a few things there that people have told me that they wanted to have, and I've put it there, and I think it's all pretty reasonably priced. But it's more about, I want people to have the tools that they find helpful. So that's there. Okay, goals for today. These were our goals for my last session. I'm going to go over these goals again. but we're really going to focus more on making sure that we have hands on. We're trying it out. We're understanding it. We're at the point where we can say I can try this with my kids. Okay, so we're going to understand what a syllable is, the role of syllabication, get our focus. That's the big thing today, is the focus for our instruction. We'll talk about the generalizations. We will do practice. We'll look at some oddities, and I have some links to resources. Okay, eye on the goal. We want to keep our eye on the goal. I'm going to try to remember to talk about when. Could you just in the chat, would you just type in what grades you deal with, whether you're a classroom or an individual tutor? Classroom teacher, individual tutor, and what grades that you're dealing with. And I'm going to try to remember to talk about the differences between, you know, K1, possibly 2 versus end of 2nd through 4th, and then 5th and up. I'll try to cover from beginning through, but please, if I forget, would you remind me? Okay, so as the caveat, as I gave last time, spoken syllabication is different from written syllabication. When we speak, we syllabicate in a different place than when what we want to do as we're writing or reading, both in encoding and decoding. In spoken syllabication, most languages, English included, the natural break is after the vowel sound, unless there are 2 unblendable consonants after it. Then the spoken is separating the consonants. But when I say camel, most of us who've been doing OG for a while, we would say, oh, that's a CAM split EL. But in speaking, if you would say the word camel, you'll see that the natural slight pause is after the ah, camel. As your mouth is going from a vowel sound into a consonant, that's where the natural break is. So spoken syllabication is different from written. So people will say, oh, but I hear the break here. That's okay. And different dictionaries will address it differently. Some dictionaries will show syllabication based on the way you say it. Some will show it the way it is morphologically. Some will show it the way other ways. So if we all opened up different dictionaries and looked at 10 words, we would see 3 different syllabications for most of the words, right? So it just happens. So if dictionaries can't agree, we don't have to agree, okay? We don't have to agree where to syllabicate. So in the past, we studied syllabication because, okay, when I went to school, I had to learn how to syllabicate. So as I hand wrote or as I typed my papers on the old typewriters where you and you got to the end of the line, you had to know where to syllabicate so you could finish the word on the next line. We don't need that now. We do not need that now. So that type of syllabication is not necessary. So why should we study syllabication now? And I went through many examples and teachings on this in the last one. I'm just going to say that we understand that we want words to be cut into chunks so that our students can attack a word. Most of our students who struggle, when they see a long word, they look at the first letter, they guess, and it's too overwhelming. So being able to syllabicate or being able to chunk the word gives them a means to attack it, so it doesn't look overwhelming. And from 3rd grade on, about 90% of new vocabulary, new words that they read are multi-syllable words. So in order to get to the meaning of those longer words, they have to know how to read them. In order to to decode them, we often have to teach them how to break it into chunks. So that's what all of that was about. Many instructions on syllabicating have the circular reasoning. And if you see that, please be very careful. So this site said that we need to syllabicate because it helps us to pronounce words. But how do you syllabicate? This is the same site. How do you syllabicate? Well, if the vowel sound is long, you split after that long vowel. Well, how do you know to syllabicate if you don't know the word? How can it help you to pronounce the word if you don't know how to syllabicate? It's the circular issue here where syllabication cannot depend on the pronunciation of the word. Syllabication is to help you get to the pronunciation of the word. Okay, so, and then Dr. Tolman's hourglass. I'm going over this very quickly this time, but just if you had an issue with this, let me know. The hourglass visual, it starts with phonological awareness, and syllables appear twice. It appears in phonological awareness, the awareness of syllables. And then as we get to connecting letters and sounds, syllables appear again here for when we want to use that knowledge to help us to decode. So we have to address syllables at two different levels. Today, I want to focus on the lower end, the decoding. So using syllabication to help us decode longer words. But I know so many questions come up about the awareness of syllables that we'll touch on that a little bit. So what is a syllable? I'm not going to go through all the definitions. There are many, 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 many definitions. Some are good, some are not. Some oversimplify and cause more problems, like the ones that say a syllable is a portion of a word with a vowel. Some say a syllable is a portion of a word with a vowel sound, or every syllable needs a vowel letter. Some of these kind of oversimplify. So going back to linguistics, the linguists, they study language. That's their job. Let's look at what they say. A syllable is a peak of sonority that's surrounded by other less sonorous sounds. So sonority, when they do those sound waves, and they measure when your voice has more sonority, more volume and length, that is a syllable. So each syllable has a peak of sonority. So sonority is that length and volume. And it is usually made up of a vowel, but there are other sonorous sounds that can be the nucleus of a syllable. This is where we get a lot of issues. When we have something other than a vowel that is giving us that peak of sonority. And this is a new slide. I didn't have this in last time. In following threads of things, I came across this. This is from a linguist. This is from a linguist's lecture to his class on in linguistics, and he says, what's a syllable? A unit of speech for which there is no satisfactory definition. So the linguists say there is no satisfactory definition. Syllables seem to be necessary in the mental organization and production of utterances, but it's hard to define. Okay, so these are the guys who study language. They say that the definition of a syllable is very, very difficult. They have a hard time defining a syllable. Okay, if the people who study oral language, if they have difficulty defining the term syllable, they say we should be, it's helpful to be aware of it. But if they say it's difficult to define it, we agree that there's going to be difficulty for our students, right? Can we all agree with that? It's going to be difficult for our students. And if it's difficult for the professors, and if it's difficult for the students, can we grade students on their ability to define and use syllables? And I'm going to say we can't. We can't hold students accountable for that definition, for these definitions of syllables and this type of syllable and this type of syllable, because if the syllable itself can't be defined well, you can't grade or hold accountable students' knowledge of it. My focus is not going to be on what is this syllable? Where do you split the syllable? It has to be split here. And what do you call this type of syllable? But my focus will be on, can we use the information to help us decode words? The goal has to be, for me, it has to be to decode words. Because until a student can decode the word, they're not going to get meaning from it. So my goal is, can we use whatever we learn to help our students decode words? And I'm going to say, if my instruction helps my student to decode words, great. If it's something that's just in the curriculum, because many people have said it's in the should be in the curriculum, but doesn't actually help the student decode the word, as a private tutor, I have the option of dropping it, unless you're married to, like, I know there are some programs that say you must teach it this way, you must agree to follow with fidelity the program as it's laid out. But even if you're using one of those in your own instruction, maybe there's some leeway as to how much you hold students back, or how much time you spend on that part of it. Anyway, but, and I know, because I've been in schools where you have to follow what was laid out before you, and that's tough. But let's see if we can get towards a more streamlined approach that just says, we want to get to the goal. Let's use the information that gets us to the goal. So because a syllable is defined around a peak of sonority, which is usually a vowel, we have to ask, what is a vowel? And you do this 100 times with teachers, and you'll say, what's a vowel? And they'll say A, E, I, O, U, sometimes Y, occasionally a W. And then you'll have someone throw in, oh, actually the GH can be part of a vowel too. So you get examples of letters that represent vowels. But a vowel is truly a sound, okay? A vowel is a sound. Linguists don't talk about the letters as being vowels. And I'm not a linguist, I'm just, reporting to you what I read. Linguists report to them as being sounds. So this is the example I go through very quickly with my students. I want you to say this word. Everyone, I see a child about to run across the street, and I want to save the child's life. What do I yell? Can I yell it? Can I yell it? Try it. You want to try it? My kids always love trying this. Can you yell this? Were you able to yell it? Did you save that life? But the second I add a vowel, can you yell it? Stop. You can make it as loud and as long as you have breath. It is the vowel that gives us that sonority. That's the quality of being able to have volume and length. Okay, so dictionaries will say that good dictionaries will say that a vowel is the unrestricted flow of air which vibrates the vocal cords, blah, blah, blah. So unrestricted, and it vibrates. So you have the voiced quality of it. And because it's not articulated or shut off in any way, it has the ability to be loud and long. Okay. And I have a really bad knee, and I have fallen, and I need someone to come to me, and I yell, ooh, 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 and I'm stuck, right? So the second I add a vowel to it, I now have the ability to be louder and longer, volume and duration. That's that sonorous quality. Help. Okay. I tell my students vowels save lives. And it is, talk about it as being the breath of a word, because remember that sonorous quality, the ability to voice, air from your lungs passing through the vocal cords. So it is the breath of the word. We as people do not live without breathing. Words and syllables do not live without that breath. However you want to define a syllable, it has to do with a group of sounds spoken together in a single pulse, a single breath. It's not perfect, but that's what I talk about. It's your breath. Just in this upper area here where we talk about the awareness of syllables, you know, we all have our tricks we do. People say clap it, people say feel your vibration, people say your jaw drop. And for some reason, a lot of kids don't like to touch themselves, and they'll start clapping any old which way, and often that doesn't work. If I need my students to be more aware, I'll often say hum it, because when you hum it, you will feel your hums. So if I take this phrase, feel the pulse or vibration, and then I want to just look at the word vibration, that was 3 hums. So for kids who don't like to touch themselves, or where they're inaccurate because they're either gripping or whatever, humming helps. But this is about the awareness. I want to get down here to where we talk about using that information to help us. But in the awareness, we have the really tricky, really tricky subject of syllabic consonants. So if the syllable is surrounded by around the peak of sonority, which is usually a vowel, when is it not a vowel? Okay. So we have in our language, we have liquids and we have nasals that allow air to come out. So when you say "oh," there's enough space beside your tongue and your mouth that air is still coming out, and you can hold a "l" for fairly long. You can try it. Oh, can you hold that? So the L can be a peak of sonority because it is allowing the airflow that you can have volume and duration. The R, again, you have with the position of your tongue, you have enough air coming out that you can hold it. So L and R, those are our liquids. And then we have nasals, where the air is actually coming through your nose, and you can hold a mm for as long as you like, because the air is coming out of your nose. And and so the nasals. Now we don't really have words in English where the ng is a nucleus of a syllable, but we do have other times when these L, R, N, and M's causes trouble. If I were to say the word bottle, it comes out as bot-tle, and there's no vowel sound here, right? Now, in orthography, we say every syllable needs a vowel, so we stuck an E here. So most of the time, when the L is syllabic, there's a vowel with it, but not always. When I say rhythm, this is a syllable without a vowel, right? Because the M is being syllabic. Or prism. M can be syllabic without a vowel. L can be syllabic without a vowel. We have instances and we'll look at it. Human, there is no vowel sound here between the M and the N. Human. And we go straight from the M to the N. It's there because of the etymology of the word. And we have a letter there, but there really isn't a sound here. And then, of course, we know that the R's, you know, we have words where the R's messes up. Father, there's really not a vowel sound here, or acre. We stick an E here, but we have other words where it messes us up. Okay, I'm just going to go through a few of these because this is one of the areas where I got a few questions written into me. So for reading, so let's go keep our eye on the goal. For reading, it's usually these syllabic consonants do not give us a problem for reading, and we're going to go through these examples. For spelling, it's an issue for spelling because kids will write in a vowel there, kids will not write in a vowel. This is where there's an issue, but the best we can do is promote orthographic mapping by getting our students to pay attention to the sound, the symbol correspondence. And they may have to do that, 4 times or 400 times. If they need to learn the spelling, the best we can do is promote orthographic mapping. Okay. For instance, these words, when I say it's not usually an issue for reading, let's look at it. If I look at this top word here, and I see 2 vowels, I want to split these up, and I can say, the I's at the end of a syllable, I'll try the sound I, die, and the A in front of L often says either or ah, so it's probably the schwa sound, die, oh. Oh, I read the word. Remember, when we go to decode, the objective is to connect these symbols to a word that's in your lexicon, in your memory. So long as you can do that, how you get there is really not worth fighting over. Okay, so I can say die, oh. Same thing for this. I see 2 vowels here. I'm going to split them up. Each vowel goes into its own syllable. Try, oh. Oh, trial. Got it. And then I come to this word here and I say, oh, I see a silent E. It's going to make the I say I, file. Now, if you look up in a rhyming dictionary, these all rhyme, dial, trial, file. And we have many kids who will try to write file as this is where I just saw this with a student, file. And that was his spelling of file. Did that approximate the sounds? Yeah. And what happens? L's are really, really tricky because think of where the L is pronounced. Your tongue is right up the front of your mouth, right up behind your teeth. Where is your tongue when you have the I sound? I. Do you feel how it's way back there? So going from that position to the front, it slides through a sound that many people identify as the y, file. Just as it's sliding forward, you can hear where kids get the y sound in there, right? And it messes up their spelling. So but they are able to read it. Does everyone agree that if your students have the basic information of phonics, that they could read dial, trial, and file based on what you normally teach in phonics? Thank you. Spelling is a little more difficult. So in spelling, we're going to try to promote orthographic mapping. So what are the sounds you hear? D, d, I. I'm going to spell it with the I. Dial. That's the schwa sound. That's that schwa sound. In this word, we're spelling it with the A. Dial. Okay, good. So we identify the sound to the simple. Trial. T, r, and when kids say, oh, it's ch, trial, you just say, yeah, and we will have many kids that'll spell it like this. The ch, right? And we just say, we don't have English words where we have a ch, r. If you hear ch, r, and if where you are, everybody says ch, r, you just say, you know what? In this case, we're spelling it with a t. That ch sound is spelled with a t. And r, I, o. That schwa sound again, we're spelling it with an A. And then the l. That promoting that mapping is what will help our students. And file, I, oh, and if they say, I hear yo, just say, okay, you might hear it. We're going to spell that with just a, oh, fi, oh, but we have E, and some people stick the E here and color it differently. Some people stick the E here. I don't care. You know, the where you put the E, you know, there are people like every box can only be a sound, so the E can't go there. And some people put it as a subscript or a superscript. I'm not going to fight any of that. However you want to do it, whether you don't want to do boxes and you're just writing it on a paper, just say, here are the sounds you hear, I, and let's just say, oh, and you know, we know how we can think to spell, and we over pronounce words to help us with our spelling. So how many kids we teach to say Wednesday in order to help them spell it. So we do that here. File, and it's just a little, and you stick it here, and we have an E. Oops, sorry, wrong thing. We have an E wherever you're going to put it that makes the I say I. Okay. But the important thing to me for today, do you agree that your students would be able to read the words, whether or not they say that file has 2 syllables or 1 syllable? And because there are many kids who hear it as 2 syllables. I say, great, fine, but we spell it like this. And we can, if we think about it this way, as file with the E making the I say I, we will promote orthographic mapping for the spelling of the word. We may not get immediate transference of the knowledge. Okay, these words are tricky. So just looking at it from the point of, can we decode the words? If I come to this word and I say, oh, I see my O-U, ow, o, u, I'm always going to try the first sound first. So I'm going to say flower, flower. Will I get to the word flower? Yeah. And then I see this next word and I say, oh, I see an O-W that says ow. I see an E-R that says and I try it as flower. Flower. Oh, I still got to the same ability to decode the words. I can still decode the words. Now, the fact that they are exact homophones, we say it exactly the same, flower and flower. One is 2 syllables, one is 1 syllable. Not important. The important thing is, can our students decode the words? And if we go to help them to spell the words, we would say, what are the sounds you hear? Ow, and we're spelling this with the OU, and we're spelling it with a R. And in this one, we have ow spelled with the OW, and we're spelling that with the ER. Okay, you can overpronounce the ER if that helps, and you can stress it just like we would stress Wednesday to help with the spelling, but it's still connecting the sound to the symbol that puts it into long-term memory. But based on what you already know of phonics and what you already are teaching your students, do you agree that once you've introduced these sounds, your students will be able to decode? Can you give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat? Or if you still have an issue with that, if you think that your students would not be able to work with that. Okay, we're good on that. Focus is on decoding. We have to get our students to decode the words, because until they can decode the words, they cannot attribute meaning to that group of squiggles. And I like to talk about, I like to talk about many years ago, I was reading a novel that it was a Russian novel and had characters. And you know, some of those names, and I was not bothering to really read through the name. It was Mr. R. And I, would read the dialogues and I would like, okay, I know who Mr. R is based on what people were saying and his actions. And then after a few chapters, I realized there were 2 Mr. R's and I had conflated them because I hadn't really paid attention to all those unpronounceable letter strings that are in the Russian names. And it's like, I have no idea who Mr. R is, because I thought he was one person with all of these attributes, where it was really two people acting in very different ways. That's the way I look at decoding. When our students guess at a word, they're doing the same thing. They're guessing the attributes of what they're seeing based on their context. But if they're guessing that word incorrectly, they never really fully get a good definition, comprehension, internal awareness of that word. We have to get them to decode accurately. That accurate decoding is what will unlock meaning. And we know that the average student needs to meet, use, interact with the word 12 to 17 times before they have not a perfect understanding of the word, but a reasonable understanding of the word's definition, right? But if they don't decode the word accurately, they're never getting that 17 times of accurate interaction with the word to get this internal understanding of the usage and definition of the word. The focus has to be on accurate decoding. Spelling is very useful for teaching reading. Spelling is very useful on its own as a skill, but it is secondary when we're trying to get kids to accurate spelling is secondary to accurate reading when we're trying to get kids up to level. Does that make sense? So that's where my focus is. And I know that there are OG programs that say you have to hit that 90 to 95% accuracy before you move on, including spelling. And for many of our students, we will never catch them up if we are waiting for that level of accuracy in spelling.
I have a question.
Yes.
On that note, I have a student that's probably supposed to be in maybe fifth grade. He's reading very, very low, like CVC words, TH. We're finally past ing and ink.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a homeschool student that doesn't get any practice. His handwriting is like a kindergartner. And he's asking me like how he spells his own name. Like he never writes his name, doesn't know. And I'm trying to figure out now what is the most important. He does not write anything. I have found that in giving dictation, it's better for me to give him a list of words to write and to copy. But I mean, the reading is still very choppy just with CVC words. So I've had mom do some other things. There's got to be other things going on, but I was thinking about just dropping the spelling because it could take me 25 minutes to get him to spell 3 words. So I said I just drop it and just keep going with the
I would
decode.
say it's worth time. It's worth some time to work on letter formation, the actual letter formation, even separate from spelling. You can do it in conjunction with spelling, but
Mm-hmm.
actual letter formation, because as students have an easier time actually forming the letters, it's less onerous to spell. Because if they're putting all of their attention onto forming the letters, they have less cognitive power available to
Right.
think about what was the sound, what are the choices for that sound,
Right.
and then produce it. So separate. I know we like to do everything at once, and joining things is good, but there are times where a few minutes, 3-4 minutes of just letter formation is helpful.
Mhm. I
So
agree.
okay, so letter formation separate. And in spelling, I would ask, is his letter sound correspondences, is that solid? Or is that still
Um,
iffy? If that's still iffy, you can do it through hand spelling, or you can do it through letter tiles, and if you're Wilson,
yeah,
the things like that. So
right.
getting
It's still very, very slow. I mean, phonemic awareness is still, I mean, he just learned his alphabet. It took him 2 years just to learn ABCs. And I guarantee if I ask him tomorrow, because I haven't had him sing the ABCs, he probably wouldn't know past N.
okay, but can he identify the letter sound when he looks at the letter?
Most of them, not V or U, V or Y's, a couple I still
Okay.
have to
So
practice,
I mean, we want our kids to know the letter names, and absolutely. And for kids who learn letter names early, it helps with sound identification. For kids who have not learned their letter names early,
but
I would still go into, let's work on the sounds and keep that as a, yes, you know, keep working on it as you're going, but that was the sound. Yes. Yes.
so I'm thinking of just really going forward with sounds, like just really going forward with his vowel teams. And if he gets it, he gets it, but he has got to start moving a little bit.
Well, I would say also that if he's not solid on his single vowel sounds, the short sounds, you want that absolutely solid, the short sounds.
He's 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 pretty solid.
And
90
so,
with short vowels.
yeah, and can he blend words easily? So if he looked at VIC, whatever, so would he say Vic? Or would he say, okay, so you want to teach that continuous blending and get that solid. Because once they can get that continuous blending where they're able to start at one end and work their way through the other end, Vic. And then well, so there's skill and then there's content. So the skill of putting sounds together is separate from the content of knowing these words. And sometimes we need to just work on the skill. It's just, and you know, might be two or 3 minutes. Let's work on the skill of just putting these sounds together smoothly.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
And then getting those sounds together so that when he's looking at the words, he's not having to say ick. And how is he ever going to read victim or whatever?
Right.
If he can say victim, then he can get there. Or with letter teams, you still want them to blend together. So it is free. You just look at the sounds and work your way through, or team. So until you have the skill of putting sounds together smoothly, I think that's a higher priority.
Yeah, I do too.
Than getting the other things, because that skill will help you move faster in everything else.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. If you learn to do anything, if you're going to play basketball, do you play a game the whole time? Or do you do drills and you stand at the free throw line and you throw 800 shots so that you have the skill of how hard, fast, directionality, whatever else? If you're going to play tennis, do you play the game the whole time, or do you do drills? And I'm going to do that toss a million times until I get my muscle memory. I get it so that it just happens without thinking. We want the skill of putting the sounds together to be boom.
Okay.
Boom. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Thank you.
And it
can I jump in for 2 seconds?
Absolutely.
I had a very similar situation, Kim. And what I found was that instead of doing ick, I never do that anymore. Now I teach them Vic. I never stop at sounds. So if it's cat, and I often use nonsense words for those guys because they've memorized words, right? So I would, but I don't say ick. I always say, I take the pencil and say Vic.
Have you seen my video on continuous blending?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I mean, yes, we do those things, and I've taught him to keep the sounds and do that. I have seen that video. He's just getting so far behind that the spelling I can help him pound out, 2 syllables. I let him knock blocks over. I let him do all kinds of stuff to do sounds. But to get him to spell a word is like pulling his hair out. And I let him do it on a big whiteboard. I let him do it everywhere. And I'm just ready to just forget the spelling and let's just keep the reading and the decoding going and maybe come back to some of the.
So let's talk about that more after, but think about where
Okay.
the block is. Is it in pulling the sounds? Is it, what's going on where the block is in the spelling? Or is it in identifying between choices, which choice is more likely? But let's talk about that after. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
perfect. Thanks.
Okay. So the very on syllabic consonants, people come up questions every day. There's a question on somebody's page. What about this word? What about this word? And my response is always going to be, does it matter whether you say rhythm is 2 syllables or 1 syllable? Can you read the word? Or kids who say smile is 2 syllables. Okay, did he read it? Right? Did he read it? That's always going to be it. And the big issue is M and N is less of an issue, but L and R is very, very tricky because where it's placed in your mouth, the r, the where your tongue's all the way forward. And if you're coming from a sound where your tongue's all the way in the back, like I or ow, where you've got a very different mouth position, that slide from one mouth position to another really messes kids up. And you know what? If they can read the word, we're good. And if they can't spell the word, let's just promote, here are the sounds. That's how you say it. Okay, if that's how you say it, then we're going to spell it this way. And if they say there's a y sound in file, because that's how they say it, you can say, well, we can think file. Or if he's stuck on it's file, and then say, okay, but we're going to spell it with an L. We're going to spell it with an L. And let's move on. Let's move on. What do we do? Keep our eye on the goal. Can we read the word? Can we read it? If our students can read the word, does it matter how they syllabicate it? Do they have to know this is a closed syllable? This is an open syllable. This is a silent E syllable. Can they read the word? Okay. And spelling is tricky. Let's just accept that spelling is tricky and go on. So the lower portion of the Dr. Tolman's hourglass is that we want to be able to look at multisyllabic words and use whatever tactics we have to help them to break it into manageable chunks. And I'm saying manageable chunks because maybe it's a syllable, maybe it's a suffix, maybe it's just a chunk that works. Okay. And if you say THM in rhythm is not a syllable, is it part of a chunk that you can work with? Great. So not fussing too much about how we label it, but rather how we can read it. So we know that there are every program has their own way of teaching syllable types between letters and the clover, and this one includes, they separate vowel teams from diphthongs. And this, I have a real issue with these because we as educators do not use the term diphthongs correctly compared to linguists. The linguists say any vowel sound or they'll talk about vowel diphthongs, but any vowel sound that moves where your mouth changes position is a diphthong. So the letter O is a diphthong because you move from one position to another. And A, we can feel that movement. So, and U is definitely a diphthong as your tongue is moving during the formation of that sound. So if we don't use the term diphthongs in a way that aligns with linguists, the way they use the term diphthongs, do we need to make our students accountable to this is a diphthong syllable? I'd say forget it. My question is, can they use the information you're giving them to read the word? So most people teach 6, a lot of programs teach 7, and so diphthongs. I'm going to skip through this. So the syllable types, does it matter whether this is a silent E? This one is an R controlled, even though this sounds very different, R control. Oh, but this one is a sorry, these are vowel teams. This one's the R controlled, right? So does it matter whether we label it as silent E vowel teams or R controlled? The question is really, can we read it? Can you use the information that you're teaching to read these syllables? So I'm of the view that we don't need to label the syllables much. There's some labels that are helpful. We don't need to label the syllables much. We want to use the information to read the word. Keep your eye on the goal. So don't ask the students to identify the syllable type. And I'm guilty of this. I had to do this for years. Most of us did, right? What is this syllable type? Let's sort by syllable type and whatnot. Let's not ask students to identify the syllable type, but rather let's ask them to read the word. And part of the issue we see is because people use different definitions of what is this type of syllable, like open syllable. Open syllable is the worst. That's the one that has the most confusing definitions. Some people say it is a long vowel sound spelled with a single letter. It's a syllable, a long sound spelled with the vowel at the end. So some people connect it to the long sound. Some people say it is a syllable with the vowel at the end of the word. Very fine programs, if they can't agree to the definition, do we need to make our students accountable for it? My question really is going to be, can we use the information to read the word? And let's go with generalizations as opposed to absolutes. Because there are always exceptions. And with our kids with dyslexia and our kids who have struggled for years, every time they hear someone say, oh, that's an exception, oh, that's an exception, they hear the Charlie Brown teacher, wah, 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 and they tune us out, right? They want something that's going to help them. So let's give them the tools that will help them, not make it more confusing. So if we go by generalizations, we say, try this. That doesn't work. Here's your next try. Most kids can accept that rather than saying, oh, it has to have a long sound. If it's an open syllable, it has a long sound. Oh, well, that one doesn't have a long sound. Oh, well, that's because that's an exception, or that's a diminutive, or that's a this. And they're like, oh my goodness, like, how much more do I have to learn in order to read these words? I actually like, this is Logic of English. If you're going to have to use syllable types, I think the Logic of English is the most logical. And they actually don't teach the consonant LE syllable. They lump all the silent E's together. They just say, hey, if it has an E at the end, great. Notice that E, and what's the job of that E? What is it doing? Is it there to make the, to change the sound of the vowel? Is it there because it needs to soften the C or the G? Is it there because of a V or a U? Is it there because, you have a consonant LE type of syllable? So they don't teach this. They just teach closed, open, multi-letter vowels and R controlleds. But I'm thinking maybe we can simplify even more. Here's my question to you. Does counting the syllables help you to decode the word? And as a scaffold, it can help. Because if you scaffold by saying, okay, how many vowel sounds do you see? You're getting them to focus. So what you focus on, you learn. So if you're using counting syllables to help give focus to the student, then it can be helpful. But as any scaffolding, we want to remove it as soon as we can. So I don't need to know how many syllables are in the word sesquipedalian. I just have to know how to read it, right? But sometimes when you're starting, counting them gives you focus because you're focusing, okay, where are the vowels? What are the vowels? Okay. Do labeling syllables help you decode the word? And if you take any adult out walking on the street and you show them a word that they've not seen before and they're able to read it, and if you ask them, did you label those syllables? They would say no, right? Labeling syllables gives us labels can give us a vocabulary to use, and common vocabulary is helpful, but labeling does not actually help you to read. For the most part, we do have to know about stable syllables. So closed syllable, we need to know the concept of If a syllable ends with a consonant, generally you use the short sound. If the syllable ends with a vowel, you generally use the long sound, but not always. Do I have to label this as R-controlled? Did you label this when you taught this to your students to read single syllable words? Did you use the term, this is an R-controlled syllable, you need to know that this is an R-controlled syllable so you can read this word? Or did you teach them AR says R, or AR represents R, and it's car? If you didn't have to give them the label or teach them anything specific for a single syllable word, you probably don't need it for a multi-syllable word. Same thing with vowel teams, silent E's. You told them that the E is going to make the I say I, or you told them the E's there because we don't end a word with a V or a U, or you told them the E's there because it needs to soften the C or the G, or whatever it is. So the same thing that applies for single syllable words apply to multi-syllable words. We don't need new vocabulary or new classification. We need the knowledge that you've already taught for single syllable words, except when we come to final stable syllables, because they don't exist in single syllable words, right? So this word here, or this syllable here, this syllable here in the word people, it says pull because that is a final stable syllable. It is a syllable by itself at the end of a word. But in the word completion, well, that's not a final syllable. We're going to just follow the rules that we've already learned, right? And I know there are words where actually the PLE uses the sound because we're going to teach generalizations. But these final syllables, we have to give instruction on. We do need explicit instruction on final syllables, and not just the consonant LE, but as one of them. Okay, so what do we need to decode the multisyllabic words? We need to have some working memory. If our student has no working memory, can't do it. You have to be able to hold some things in memory in order to interact with it. You need at least 3 working memory of 3 or 4 to work with multisyllabic words, but you also needed that to work with single syllable words. Okay. Do you know, we need to know which graphemes represent vowel phonemes. That you need to know because it is the vowels that are the peak of sonority that we're going to identify as being the nucleus or the base of a syllable. We need to know which are vowels. And so when you get to your vowel teams, they need to know that OW is a vowel team as opposed to a consonant team like a TI or SI or CH. Okay, so you need to know which are vowels and which aren't. And the student needs to be able to read the syllable on its own. If the student can read the syllable by itself, then we can read multisyllabic words. What is this syllable? Could you read it by itself? And then this syllable, could you read it by itself? Did I have to label it for you to read it? Or did you know that it's v and And this syllable, could you read it by itself? Did you know that the EA says E or A, and the most common sound is E? If you could read these by itself, you can attack multisyllabic words. Okay, we don't need to know all the labels. Okay, so there are other programs that are losing labels. If you have the slide deck, each of these are linked to their sites. Really great reading. I've seen their K-2 and it looks good. I haven't seen their or it might be K-3, but I haven't seen their upper one. But from what I see, it looks good. They do not ask kids to label. They just ask them to find the vowels and put the sounds with, put the consonants around the vowels, make it work, and it looks good. Reading Simplified is great, K-2. And then they go into a Flex-It strategy that just says flex the sounds. Now, if you had been working with the students, and if they're coming along fine, just saying flex the sounds will probably work for most students. But our students who are 2 and 3 years behind, and if you say, look at this word and flex the sounds, they're looking at 10 letters and they're like, forget it. I'm out of here. right? So, and same thing with the Readsters, their Lose the Rules program. And this link is to their slide deck, so you can see how they go through it. I think this one is pretty good. These are all good. I know through the K to 2. I think this one is a little too simplistic once you go from grade 3 and up, because we have too many orthographic rules that affect the spelling, which affects the decoding for us to read multisyllabic words. But I haven't taken their training, but just from what they've presented, the presentations I've seen, it looks a little simplistic. So it's probably fine for K to 2 or K to 3. Okay, so here's what I do. The way I've tried to streamline it is I go through 4 steps, and I like to use my hands. Where's my visual on my hands? I like to use my hands. So we're going to start with our hands up. First step. So my K to 2 students, I would say look for compound words, prefixes, and suffixes, because even in first grade, they are learning those inflectional suffixes, the S, the ES, the ED, the ING, the ER, right? Even in first grade. Second grade, they're adding more onto that. So look for compound words, prefixes, and suffixes. My grades 2 on up, I would say look for morphology. What do you see? Look for affixes. Definitely by 4th and up, I would say look for affixes, because they're starting to learn root words and we want to notice them. It doesn't always help with the decoding, but we want to notice them because they will help with meaning. So step 1, whether you want to say prefixes and suffixes, or whether you want to say affixes, or whether you want to say morphology, however you do it, that's the first step. That's the first thing to identify. Okay. And we'll go through the steps. Step 2, what are your letter teams, and both vowel and consonant letter teams? So the SH, the TI, the CH, the EA, any letter team. Let's notice them and link them together. I say underline it. I don't care if you underline it, but let's underline it. Let's link them together so we don't split them apart. And there's a caveat here for R controlleds. So AR usually says R. ER usually says IR usually says If the R, the AR, the ER, IR, OR, if after the R is another vowel, sometimes, like, I don't know what verbiage you use with R controlleds, bossy R. So instead of linking with the AR, ER, OR, UR, sometimes it wants to go with the other vowel. So just to be aware that that these can cause problems. And I have a list here of some of the common ones that you can look at where it is not R controlled. It's not a AR, ER, OR. So like in the word miracle, it's not miracle. And it's not R-ena or R-ena. So if the R is between 2 vowels, sometimes instead of sticking to the first vowel, sometimes it goes with the second vowel. He's fickle. And you know what? I have not had any kids, even the little ones, have a problem with that, because I say, you know, I usually like to stick with this person and we like to do things together. But oh, if I see my other friend, sometimes I'll say, okay, I want to go and be with my other friend right now. I'll talk to you later. And I've never had even little kids have a problem with that. Just say, yeah, sometimes they usually like to stay together, but sometimes they don't. And so this list is here for you if you want it, but just be aware in your head that those R controls are sometimes broken. Okay. We want to try to link our letter teams together so we don't split them up. The TI, CI, and SI are only a letter team if they're followed by a vowel. Like if in the word active, I see a TI here, but is that a sh? It's not a sh because I can't say shiv, shiv. So the TI, CI, or SI can only use the Latin sound if the next letter is a vowel. Because I can't say sh, but I can say shun. If you're working down in your first grades, this is not relevant, but if you're working at the upper levels, they need to be aware of that. When you're looking and you see a TI, you have to ask, what's the next letter? Is it a TI saying sh, or is it just a T and an I, each making their own sound? So we first, step one. What was step one? Well, choose a word that you're going to say for the groups you're going to say it. You know, and I use different words for different ages, whether it's morphology or affixes or compound words and suffixes, whatever. But that's the first step. Step two, letter teams. And the reason we go in this order is because one trumps the other. Okay. Step three, mark your vowel sounds. We have to know of the graphemes in this word, which ones represent vowel sounds, because syllables are broken around vowel sounds. And just as a reminder, R controlled have a vowel. So it's R or whatever. R controlled have a vowel sound. So that is a vowel and a consonant. But the Q, U, TI, CI, and SI are only consonants. Those are not vowel sounds. Qu is actually two consonant sounds. Qu, not a vowel. The U is not a vowel there. The TI is sh, not a vowel. Sh, not a vowel, right? We want to be aware of what are vowel sounds. These are not vowel sounds. E's at the end of a word or in front of a suffix are silent. Silent, that is not a vowel sound. We need to notice it, but it is not a vowel sound. Step one, affixes. Step two, letter teams. Step three, vowel sounds. Step four, split them up. So by putting it on my four fingers, I give a visual clue to my students. We practice this, we teach it and practice it explicitly, but after they're going for a while, I might just hold up my fingers just to remind them, did you pay attention to this? Did you pay attention to this? Did you pay attention to this? So going from the verbal instruction, so I'm able to just use a hand signal, just as a, you know, to reduce the scaffolding. So scaffolding, we teach it explicitly, we practice it explicitly. Eventually reduce the scaffolding and our kids are able to fly through, and then they get stuck on a word and they say something crazy, wacky, and I might just say, did you? And they're like, oh, okay. And they'll pay attention. Did they really pay attention to the suffixes or the whatever? So I like to use the hand signals, even with my older kids, because older kids will stumble, and I don't have any groups right now, so it's all individual. But when I had groups, it was a lot easier to just give a quick signal to a student as a scaffold in a group, rather than have to say, George, you forgot to look for, right, and point it out. So just the quick signal helped the students. I still use it even though I'm just virtual, because when kids are thinking, sometimes my words can interrupt their thinking. So by just giving them a signal, they're like, oh, okay, right. And they'll go back to pay attention to that step. Okay, and then we separate each sound. So this is just a very rough outline, and it gets more complicated. So this diagram here, most of you have seen ones like this that say if there's two, you know, if there's zero constants between the vowels, you split between the vowels. Does this look familiar to most of you? Something like this has been in most programs for splitting. Yes, no? Most of the time in most programs, there's something like this that says if there's one consonant between the vowels, most of the time you split in front of that single consonant and you have a long vowel sound in the first syllable. And people talk about robot and robin, and they talk about camel and tiger, whatever you're going to call it. This is what's common in most programs, something like this. And they'll say, well, generally split in front of the consonant and you would have a long a long vowel sound in an open syllable, and it's ro and then bot. But then sometimes you split after the single consonant and you have a closed syllable, and it would be closed syllables use the short vowel sound, and it would be rob in. And that works. That works. That's a lot of verbiage. So I've kind of tried to conflate all of that and just say, if there's one consonant between the vowels, try the vowel two-way, try the preceding vowel sound two ways. Try the long one first, then try the next one. See which one works. Okay. So rather than labeling, oh, this one's an open syllable because it says robot, and this one's a closed syllable because it's rob in, I'll just say, okay, you see one consonant here? Try the syllable two ways, ro or raw bot. Is it robot or robot? Oh, it's robot. Okay. And I do show kids the splitting, because we did learn when we looked at single syllable words that if the syllable ends with a consonant, it's usually the short sound. If a syllable ends with the vowel, it's usually the long sound. Because we've taught that for single syllable words, we'll still see that in the multisyllabic, but I'm not going to ask kids to label it. So use the knowledge of what you've taught for single syllables to help them decode the longer words. If there's two consonants, most of the time, you're going to use the short sound here. Most of the time you split right there, use the short sound. But sometimes you're going to use the long sound because, like if I look at replace, or someone came up with the word, I have it in our practice sheet, but we'll get to it. If I look at the word replace and someone will say, oh, it's replace, because I see two consonants, I'm going to split between. I just say, okay, does that make a word you know? Do you know a word replace? Try the other sound. Replace. Oh, okay, that makes a word I know. So the objective is always to get to a word that's in your memory. And if the student has never heard the word before, then you often just have to tell them that in this word, this is what we do with it. So if the word's in their lexicon, you connect the symbols to that word. If it's not, then we have to teach it. And then if there's 3 or more consonants, just figure out which works. I can say construction, or I can say construction, but I can't say construction. So just figure out a split that works. Figure out one that works. And then as my students are learning affixes, bases, and roots and prefixes and suffixes, they'll recognize that that's a con and that's a struck, that those are probably parts that they know.
Part of the questions I have is in this part where you're going from students who know kind of that basic stuff, and now you're getting into the con and the struct and the ION, and how do you do the transition of what do you start leaving behind? Do you still do all your sounds, or do you start doing the final stable syllables in your drills? Just that, but some of the transition piece, if you can link in that.
What I do is I have a drill deck, and depending on how often I see my students and where they are, I have sounds, like in the very beginning, I have sounds they haven't been introduced to. We drill the others. When I know that they're solid, I skip those slides. And I drill what they are still learning, what they're not completely sure on, and plus new material. Every month or so, I'll pull up the whole deck and we'll run through the whole deck. And then I'll say, yep, we're still good on all of those. Oh, I can see that you've sort of forgotten this one. I'm going to pull that back into my active deck. And I might do it every month for most of my students, I only do it once a month or once every 6 weeks. Some students, I do it more frequently where I see that their memory is still kind of fluid. As I'm retiring these, or I skip the slide, you know, in like Google Slides, I put it into Google Slides. Now I just skip the slide, and we don't even do it on a daily basis or per session basis. We just are working on the ones that they're not sure on. So I'm never spending a lot of time on what they've got complete mastery on. And then I add in, if we're working, now I don't do chunks, and I don't do like final stable syllables. I just ask them to use it. So we've practiced that in our blending and reading, and if they're good, I don't drill any of the final stable syllables. I might drill morphemes as we're learning it. So I might have a suffix drill, and I might have a base drill for some of my more advanced kids. And again, if they've mastered it, it's skipped. I'm never, like my drill, I don't want it to take more than 3 minutes. I just want to go boop, done. This is the way I conflate these and try to simplify it. I just say, if there's one consonant between the vowels, try the first vowel sound 2 ways. Try the long one first, that's more common, then try the short one. If there's 2, it's over 90% of the time, it's most of the time, use the short vowel sound for the first vowel. Occasionally, if that didn't make a word, try the other sound just to see, particularly if you come across a word with a consonant cluster that works going into the second syllable. Step 1, whatever you're going to call it, affixes. Step 2, letter teams. Step 3, vowel sounds, split it up. These are templates you can look at. And I have a nonsense word one that I do with some of my students. Like if they're 4th, 5th grade and they've memorized 8 million words, but they still have no idea how to put sounds together, I'll use a nonsense word one to practice syllabicating, to break those letter strings into syllables. And then I also have it for, this is one with real words. Sorry, that's like this one here. And I'll say, okay, I see vowel, 2 consonants in between. What are we going to do? Split it up, and it is public. Vowel, consonant, split it up, pollen. And so I have a bunch of these that will do this. And if I need to, with my students, and if they're having trouble, I can mask it and say, okay, now say the first one, now say the second one, put it together. So, and put the word together, or I can just make it a line. And we go through these with the VCCV and VCV. So here, I see one consonant here. Do you see this one consonant right here? I'm going to say this vowel 2 ways. Is it mu or music? So I can show them music and music and ask them which is the real word and have it connect to a word in their memory. And then they say it's music. Okay. Like that. So I do a lot in Google Sheets because it's easy for me to put a list in, and I put word lists in Google Sheets, and then I do this sort of thing with it, and then I take those lists and I pop it into a bingo game, and I take the same list and I pop it over into, a flippity thing or whatever. So I just have the lists, but I understand a lot of people don't like to use Google Sheets. So here I would say, okay, I see my one consonant. What are we going to do? Try it 2 ways, fi or fiber. Oh, it's fiber, right? I see one consonant. What am I going to do? Try it two ways, E or event. It's event, event. And then at around this time, we'll also work on stresses because we often have to flex the stress. So I do this with Google Sheets, and I had a video on the slide deck, which if you want to look at, a student who did it for the, was either the first or the second time that he did this exercise, and you can see how quickly he caught on. I also have it with Google Slides, because I know people like Google Slides better than Google Sheets. So I'll say it two ways, hue or huh, mid. Which one's the real word? Humid. Say it two ways. And I'll tell them ahead, we're practicing words that have only one consonant between my vowels. So what do? This is that explicit practice to help them, give them a strategy to use. So say it two ways, bay, ba, oh, I pulled up the bay or basic, it's basic. Yep, there it is. Hay or habit, which one is it? Habit. There we go. D or deduct, it's deduct. And vi or virus. There we go. So I do this as that practice. And some of these are linked in the slide deck. And there was a video here. I won't play it now, but you can watch it, of a student who's did it for the very first time or second time, I don't remember. And for him, in this one, I was putting both two consonants and one consonant. So he had to choose. If I see two consonants, I'm going to just try to say it one way with the short sound. But if there's one consonant, I had to say the preceding vowel two ways. When we get to this point, there's always the discussion we hear from people that, oh, we really should teach structured word inquiry. And I agree that morphology is king. Morphology trumps syllabication most of the time. But if we don't decode the word, we're never going to get the meaning from the words. So if you look at a word and the kid just glosses over it because he's given up, the fact that morphology is more important than orthography is really irrelevant. We have to have both together. We have to use the decoding to unlock the pronunciation of the word. And then we can join that with what you see from the morphology end of the meaning of the word to get a good representation of, the word, to get comprehension from the word. Here we go. If I look at these words here with the root DEC or DECI, whatever you want to call the root, and I'm going to go through my steps. Step one, what was it? Affixes or something. Let's see. I see this word. I see it That's often a suffix. Maybe it is. And erase. I generally mark it across the top because maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, maybe I want to move it. Is D a prefix? The student might say, oh, I think D is a prefix. This actually happens to be the from the root DEC, but let's say kids say, I think that's a prefix. Okay, well, let's try it. I let the kids have some productive struggle here. Okay, step two. Are there any letter teams? Yeah, I see the ER. Step three. Where are your vowels? Let's see, I see a vowel, vowel, vowel. Okay, I'm going to split it up. I see one consonant between my vowels. I might have to try this one two ways. Here I see two. It's probably like that. So I might try that. December. December. I got it. I tried it with the way that worked. It worked. The fact that the root is DEC, meaning 10, because December used to be the 10th month, didn't help me read the word. But now that I've read the word and connected it to a word in my memory, I say December. And then I can say, hey, did you know the year used to start in March and December is was the 10th month. And, like September was the 7th and October was the 8th, November was the 9th, December was the 10th. Okay. But it was the syllabicating that helped me decode the word. Now let's look at this next word. Okay. Do I see a suffix I know? Well, and most of my students know ATE. Maybe it's D. Oh, now I know that root is DEC. Maybe it's DEC, maybe it's D. Let's figure it out. Okay. Are there any letter teams? Nope. Where are my vowels? Boom, boom. Oh, that one's silent. It doesn't count. What's it going to do? I'm going to split it up. I can try this. And I can try that. Decimate. Decimate. Still not a word that connects to my memory. When that doesn't work, then I try it the other way. I'm going to remember that I'm going to try that 2 ways. Decimate, decimate, decimate. Oh, there's the word, decimate. So we try one, the more common. If that doesn't work, we try the next step. So long as we can connect it to a word that's in your memory. And if the students have never heard the word before, I'll say, that's the right one, decimate. And it means to destroy something. And did you know that in the old days, one of the punishments these guys used to do is they would line the people up and kill off every 10th person? That's how they decimated the village. That's where they got the word decimate. We don't use it like that now, but I might say that you have decimated my room. You've completely destroyed it, right? Bringing in as much language as we can. But by trying the most common, then try the next common sound, we connect it to a word in their lexicon or a word that we're going to introduce. Let's try this next one. Now I'm not so sure whether D is a prefix here because I've been seeing this DEC and I don't see anything else. Step 2, nope, no letter team. Step 3, where are my vowels? Right here. And I see that silent E, what's it going to do? I'm going to try it like this first, decade, or I will try it with the S sound, decade. That's the word, decade. A decade is 10 years. So I can do it by marking the breaks in different ways, or I can say, let's just try the other sound. And it really doesn't matter to me. So whatever steps we teach here, this is scaffolding. As our students learn to look for these things, after a while, they just go through the word, letting their eyes and their brain look for the vowel sounds, look for the letter teams, look for the prefixes and suffixes, and it happens pretty fast. Knowing the root of DEC helps us with the meaning. It did not help us know how to pronounce the C in decade. That was our orthography, our phonics rules that helped us. So the two joined together.
Yeah, I had this last week with the word signal.
Oh, yeah.
And adding resign to signal and that whole big deal. And
right.
So that's what I'm wondering with the wording, how when you're transitioning into all of these roots, and I also had like perimeter and we had peri and meter.
Right.
And then there's that vowel shift.
Right.
And the wording and how you explain that to a student, and like bio and ology, and you just drop an O. Like, when do they know to do this? How do they, is there no rules?
So no, we don't have the rules. We are not Latin scholars, right? So it helps to just say, can you read this word? Okay, to spell it in this word, it needs this. So the root here is sign, and we have the GN saying, representing the N sound, and the I is saying I in front of two consonants, just like the wild old words. The I can say I in front of GN because there's two consonants, sign. But as soon as I add a suffix on, the GN is only the N sound when it's at the end of a word. So here it's signal, and both are pronounced, right? Signal. And resignation, then we have the re And it's actually doing this, right? So you just try resignation and resignation. Which one's the word that's in our vocabulary? Okay. Did we get to that? Perfect. And simplify. We don't, I mean, I like knowing why when I can, but at this point in my life, I'm not going to study Latin grammar and history of the Latin language. I'm going to say, yeah. Were we able to read it? Good job. Good job. Okay.
I'm
And
just
move
finding
on.
more and more of that's happening as they're learning more roots and they're adding those final syllables.
Yep.
And it's just that shift is happening. And
Yep.
so you just say, well, it just shifts when we say it. That's what I just tell them.
Yep. Just say, you know what? We're not going to study Latin today. Let's get on with, but it happened in the Latin. You guys want to study Latin? Oh, okay. All right. You know, and let's go on. Because if our job is to help them to read English, Latin is so important, but I'm not going to study at this point in my life. I'll study the things that I know help, that we see consistently, that we can see that there's a pattern, and by explaining the pattern, it can help. But those odd ones, I can't tell you why some of them get the O and when some of them don't get the O. And I know it has to do with some of their what's the word? Not the tense, not the tone. There's another word that they use for Latin verbs. I can't even remember it right now. So we don't even use it in English, but it's something that they used in Latin, and it's reflected in our English usage of those words that came to us. And there are people who can tell you why, and I'm not one. So here the root is SPIR. And if I were to syllabicate this with my kids, if we're looking at this, I'll say, oh, look, there's a purr. Some of them have, oops, back up. Some of them have learned purr. Great. Okay. Step 1 was affixes. Step 2, letter teams. Oh, I see there. I see that. Oh, wait. It can be an but the silent E trumps it. Back it up. Undo. I've got an E there. So mark your vowels. Here's a vowel. Here's a vowel. That one's silent. It's probably making the I say I. Doop, doop. And I see a vowel between it. I have 3 consonants. Which ones look like they fit together? And if they say purse and pyre, do they still get to the word that's in their memory? Will they connect it to perspire? Now, most students at this point will see that there's a root per, or a prefix per and a root spire, and say perspire and connect it that way. But if they said perspire, if they separated it after the S, would they still connect it to their memory? Great. And at that point, you can teach and say, hey, actually, you know what? Look at this. This is the prefix per, and we see it in a lot of words, and it means by or with. It's just a preposition. So like percent means for every cent, for every 100, or whatever else we'd see purse in. And you can teach that. But here we go. Next word. I don't see any roots. Sorry, any affixes. I don't see. Is this an IR saying Let's try it. Here's a vowel. Here's a vowel. Is it spirit? I don't know a word spirit. Uh-oh, I see a vowel after the R. R's can be tricky that way. So instead of linking those together, I'm going to do it separately and do it that way and try spi or spirit. Which one connects to a word in your memory? Spirit. Perfect. We got it. So if we teach them the generalizations of the steps to go through, we give them success at getting a word that they recognize. And that's my goal. That's my goal. Next one. Ooh, I see a prefix. I know this one. Re means again. And this is a suffix. Okay, let's look for any letter team. So step 1 was affixes. Step 2, Maybe they see the SPIR at this point, which means to breathe, right? SPIR. Maybe they don't. But let's say I see a letter team, IR. I see a OR. We're going to link those together for the first time through. Let's mark our vowels, E, I, A, O, Y. Okay, let's split it. Okay, I might split it here, but you know what? Hey, you were trying to trick me, and I saw that prefix. So I'm going to split it here because I saw that prefix. And I see this, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do that. And that. Okay, because I'm linking those the OR together. Let's try it. Respiratory. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. What's the next step we are going to try? Whenever you have a single consonant between your vowels, the next step will be to try the other sound, right? So instead of the E, we're going to try the eh sound. Or instead of splitting before the S, we're going to split after. Respiratory. Oh, that's getting closer. Now, at this point, if productive struggle has gone on enough, they're analyzing and you're thinking, they're not going to get it. They're not going to get it. You can say, you know what? This is a crazy word. I'm going to teach you a word. A syncopated schwa. You know what? Most adults don't know what a syncopated schwa is. I have to tell you, you guys are amazing students. And it means that we're not even going to say the vowel. It is schwad so much, we're not even going to say it. And so this vowel here is that special type of schwa. We're not even going to say it. Respiratory. And we can just tell them it's, we want our kids to analyze. That process of analyzing means that they're focusing, right? And what orthographic mapping is taking sound to symbol. So it's that really noticing the internal structure of a word. So a little bit of productive struggle is good because they're really looking at the word. And then you say, hey, in this word, we're not even going to say the I. Respiratory. And that A, that's another schwa, but that one we kind of say, right? Respiratory with the schwa sound. So a little bit of productive struggle is good. They're not going to get it. Doesn't matter how many times they go through, because who would guess to drop out a vowel completely with a syncopated schwa, right? So at that point we tell them, say, hey, in this word, this letter is schwad so much we're not even going to say it. Respiratory. And we move on. Okay. But they've still looked at it, analyzed it, noticed the symbols that are relating to the sound, and then you would ask, okay, so what's the first syllable? Res. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Respiratory. Oh, what's the weird thing in that syllable? I'm not even saying the I. Respiratory. Pratory. Yeah, and what sound is this A making? It's making an sound, the schwa sound. So connecting symbol to sound. Decoding is a process of going through the most likely combinations to get to a word. It is not precise. It can't be precise because language has changed over the last 800 years of what we would consider English. There's been way too much change, and we've had all the input from foreign languages. It cannot be precise, but it is very, like they say, 95%, 90-something% decodable once you know the generalizations. And we're going to hit that 2 to 5% that you're going to have to tell them. This is how we say this word. Let's connect the symbol to the sound. Let's notice what symbols represent what sounds, place it into long-term memory. This is a document that you can download. And I have spelling rules. I have spelling and reading. So spelling and reading work reciprocally, right? So Like the C says S after EI, before a EI or Y, that's the reading rule. The spelling rule is that you have to use a K in front of EI and Y. So spelling and reading rules can work hand in hand. And you have to know both. So in reading, if you see a CK at the end of a word, you know that it's a short vowel sound. If you're spelling it, you know that you need the CK after a short vowel sound. So they work together to help you with reading and spelling. Some of them are just for decoding. So I have some here that are for decoding, like the ED, and you know it, forms a new syllable if the base word ends with a D or a T, right? Do you have that in your OG programs? So that means as you're decoding, if you see ED after a D or a T, it's its own syllable. If the preceding letter is not a D or a T, it's not another syllable. It's either the D sound or the T sound. I often says E before a vowel, like radio and marine, and in the INE ending. There are spelling and reading rules here. You can have them. And if any of them are not clear, I'm sure you know all of them, but it's just, you know, thinking of how they work together. Silent E rules, plural rules, and here's that sheet on how to decode longer words with the steps. This is the visual of how it's done most times, not the way I simplify those two sections, but the way it's done most of the time. And here's this page here, reading with suffixes, is like a flow chart. Suffixes affect the way you decode a word because spelling changes we have those spelling changes because of suffixes, right? So we know that we drop an E if you're adding a vowel suffix. We know that you keep the E if it's a consonant suffix. We know we change the Y to an I unless the suffix or the ending begins with an I. We know that we double certain letters. So those things that we teach as spelling rules, we have to think of how it impacts our reading. And this is where a lot of our kids get messed up, is taking what you've taught in spelling and working backwards when you come to reading. So a lot of us spend time teaching it in spelling. And most kids I see need a little extra time when it comes to working with it in reading. So this is a kind of a flow chart. If you have a consonant suffix, generally you're going to split before the suffix. If there was an I in front of it, it used to be a Y. Yes, it used to be a Y. I said that correctly. And it retains the sound that the Y had. If there's an E in front of a consonant suffix, that's a silent E. Figure out what that E was doing. And I will tell you that there's an assessment that has, I think it's this word. On the assessment. Did I spell it correctly? Okay. And I get so many kids that come to it and they'll say common cement. Common cement? Looks right, common cement. Because they're doing a lot of things right. They're going left to right. They're trying to pronounce everything they see. They simply don't know to look for the consonant suffix, and an E in front of it is silent. What did that E do? So if you're not aware of your suffixes, you run into problems like this. And I can't tell you how many kids, I think it's in the San Diego Quick or one of those, I don't remember, that had this word, and it's like another one. Common cement. I think it was this. Anyway, an E before a suffix is silent. When you look at suffixes, you're going to notice these things. Is it a consonant suffix? What's in front of it? If there was an I, that I used to be a Y. If there's an E in front of it, it's a silent E. It's at the end of the previous word. What was it doing at the end of that previous word? Figure it out. Okay, if you have vowel suffixes, an I in front of the vowel suffix used to be a Y. What sound did it have as a Y? So cover up the suffix, think of that as a Y. What was the sound? Vowel suffixes, the I used to be a Y. If there's a double consonant before the suffix, split between the consonants. The consonant may have been doubled, or maybe there was already two there because of a floss rule. But in any case, you will have a short vowel sound in the first syllable, the preceding syllable. I see hopping, split between my P's, and it's hopping. I doubled the P. messy, two S's. I can split between them and say messy. Now the word was mess. And if you say, well, I see the word mess, I'm going to just say mess with two S's and then the Y is by itself. Did we get to the word that has meaning? We're good. We're good. This is only applicable if the student can't read the word. These are steps to help them to decode it, to connect it to meaning. Okay. If there is a single vowel and a single consonant before the suffix, there's two ways to do it. So here, this word here, and let me show the two ways a little bit bigger. I have hopping. There's two ways, and I just whichever works for the kids. I see one P between two vowels. I'm going to say, I don't want to say ho or hop because hopping would be incorrect, and most kids will say hopping, right? I would say one P, you can do that and say hoping. Or what I prefer doing is saying, oh, I see a single consonant in front of my vowel suffix. A single vowel, single consonant. There used to be an E here. What was the word with the E? And the word was hope. When we split this, I'll often have them say, oh yeah, there was an E. And only at the very beginning, some of the students will actually want to write back in the E to read the word, but most of them are going to say, oh yeah, and that E would have made the O say O, so it's hoping. So a single vowel, single consonant in front of a vowel suffix, the silent E was dropped. Words, if there is a consonant L in front of the suffix, split before the consonant L. The silent E was dropped, and that consonant L was part of a consonant LE syllable. If you look in a dictionary, and if you see this word, I'm going to make this larger. I feel like I'm squinting. Where are we here? Here. If you look up this word here in the dictionary, there will be two pronunciations given, stumbling or stumbling. And it depends on where you are, what people will say. A lot of people will say stumbling as 3 syllables. If you say it as stumbling, you have a syllable without a vowel at all. You'll have BL as a syllable without a vowel. I just say the silent E was dropped. The point is, will they be able to read the word? Vowel suffix, the ing, I see a consonant L in front of it, they will probably stay together because it was a consonant LE syllable. Stumbling or stumbling. But check out this word here. Everyone says it with an extra syllable there for the CL. Recyclable. Recyclable, right? The CL is definitely a syllable by itself, and the dictionaries agree. I haven't seen one that disagrees that the CL is a syllable by itself without a vowel. It's okay. The E was dropped. It is one of those consonant LE syllables. But the steps still work. I see a prefix re. I see the suffix able, which happens to be 2 syllables. And in between, I see a CYCL. The CL, if you see a consonant L at the end of a word in front of a vowel suffix, the E was dropped. So think of it as a CLE. Okay. If you have words that end with an ES, you have to determine, was the ES added to make the word plural? Like with the SH, CH, SX, or Z, we add ES, or if the word ends with the O, you add ES, or if you change the Y to an I and add ES, or if you change the F to a V and add ES. If the ES was added to make the word plural, the ES forms a new syllable if the base word ends with a sibilant sound. So matches, fences, faces. It adds an extra syllable. The ES adds a syllable. And I don't care whether you split it like fences or fence as. The point is that you want to connect the word to a word in your memory. And the ES will often just say s if the word does not end with one of those sibilant sounds, like knives. The ES just says z, or tomatoes. The ES just says z. Okay. If the ES was not added to make a word plural, then only the S was added and the E is silent. What did it do? So it's like, okay, did I add an ES to this word? Okay. And then working backwards, sleeve, sleeves. I just added the S to this word. What did the E do there? Not a darn thing. Blonde, right? So just working backwards from your spelling rules to help you with the decoding. And then the ED, we know if the ED comes after a D or a T, it forms a new syllable. If the ED does not come after a D or a T, it's just part of the previous syllable. So pulled, picked, right? So that's more of the lower level, but it's, you know, that awareness of what's happening within the word. That's in there, and then there's some other things, but this kind of flow chart is there, and I know that's a lot to process at one time, but as you're working with words, you'll see, and you probably know where you see students struggle. Is there anything else, any other place, if you want to say where you see students struggle when they're dealing with decoding a word with suffixes? I have a template to share with you that looks like this. And what I'll do with my students, and this is like, you know, first, second grader kids reading down at that level, and they're not sure what to do with this. I will say we're practicing specifically with words that end with a IES. If you see the ES, if you see an I in front of it, the word used to be, the I used to be a Y. What was this word? And then we'll go through. And we'll practice it with some words just so they can see what to do. I have these, and we practice it with a bunch of words here. I practice it with words that have an ES. So then we ask, did we add the ES or just the S? So it's rich, so that's riches. And here, did I add the ES or the S? I don't have to add an ES to a word ending with a G, so I just added the S. What's that E doing? The E is there to soften the G. So we go through and analyze the effect of these. But getting kids to focus on what's happening within the suffixes and relating it to the rules that you've already taught on the spelling changes helps them to decode. Now, these are easier words. This is like first, second grade, but there's a lot of kids who have memorized these words, but can't apply that same thinking to longer words. So by getting them to really analyze what was it you were doing down in these words and then taking it to the longer words, they can see, oh yeah, that's right. I know how that I just added the S and its face. But you know, you'll see kids who see a plural word with a silent E that's in a 2-syllable word and have no idea how to attack it. I have a list of suffixes for you, and there's so many on the internet, right? So you can always grab a list of suffixes. And I have final stable syllables. I have a more complete list of suffixes. I have a list of final syllables that affect pronunciation. So it's not just the consonant LE, but some of these really affect pronunciation. For instance, the ARY, we don't say RE, it's airy, customary, temporary. So we want to explicitly teach that when you see this as an ending, it's a word ending, it's not, you know, it's 2 syllables, but when you see this, it's airy, right? And AGE is not age, it's usually edge. We need to explicitly teach these, that when you see these at the end of a syllable, end of a word, sorry, I have a list that affects the way you pronounce words, and that's there.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is that the order you teach those in?
These,
Yeah. Is that like an order that you would teach those in? Somewhat.
Approximately, yeah. I would say I would teach that first. I would often, yeah.
Okay. That's kind of what I was thinking, and I was kind of looking for something like that. So on your list that you have, does that list kind of follow?
This list of ones that affect pronunciation, no, this is alphabetical. But this
Okay.
is so that I'm aware that at some point in time, I'm gonna, and usually we'll come across words maybe even before I've taught it, and I'll say,
Right.
oh yeah, the ANT ending,
And then you just teach it.
it might be ent, right?
Okay.
And it's the schwa sound, airy, ate, or et, and Chrissy, it's, you know, it's the very schwa there, and freedom, schwa, et, iffy, or if I.
So you would just give them a kind of a short, mini little lesson and move on.
What I often do is I do mini lessons like in a bingo game when I just need to do a change of pace in my lesson. So this is not explicit teaching. This is, okay, we're going to take a break. I'm going to use this break time to do a mini lesson. So in fact, here, I'm going to send this to you, and let's copy the link, sending it to you in chat. In groups or individually, if it's individually, I might share the screen, or I share my link and my student and I work within the same board. If it's in a group, I'll do this, or I take a picture of this and stick it in on my Jamboard or in my Classic or wherever it is I'm putting it, and we play. If you've generated a card, I'm going to say, I'm thinking of a word that means when I want to take a long trip. Can anyone think of the word, and what's the suffix that might be on that word? A long trip. I'm going to go on an ocean. Shout out the word. Means, think, if I want to take say it.
Shun. Vacation.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. You get to mark it. You get to mark it. Can anyone else think of another word that uses that suffix?
T-I-O-N or S-I-O-N?
Yes. Can you think of another word that uses it? So Marianne has marked the T-I-O-N, S-I-O-N.
Mansion.
Perfect. You get to mark that. What is a mansion? Something, manse means large. A mansion is a house that is quite large. Anyone else think of another word that means a long trip? Now you said vacation.
The voyage?
Good. You mark that one. What's that word ending?
AGE.
Perfect. And it's pronounced edge. Now, Marianne said vacation. Can anyone else think of a word that uses the base of that word, the vacay, in another word with another suffix?
Vacate.
Perfect. What ending is that?
A-T-E.
Good. Mark it. So I can play games like this where I give a clue and I let people come in with different words, change the ending and make new words, whatever. And I'll try to instruct as I go along. So I might do something like this and just play for a couple of minutes and give them familiarity. Okay. The other thing I like to do is I will play something like this. And we're playing concentration. Someone call out 2 numbers. Kim, you're first. Call out 2 numbers.
2, 9.
2 and 9. So this one means to make, as if I want to make a room dark, what will I do?
Enlighten.
Nice. This one, it makes it into an adjective, a describing word. Can you think of a word?
Active.
Excellent. So I'll go through, maybe do a little bit of teaching, get the students involved. And I like it. I purposely miss, because the more times I miss and the more times they're doing it, the more words we're coming up with, right? Okay, Catherine, pick 2 numbers.
5, 7.
Sorry, 4 and 12.
Okay, this one has two meanings. Can you think of words that have the two different meanings for
Words that have two different meanings.
Sorry.
for-
So this suffix has two different meanings. One means a person who does it, and the other one means more. Can you think of a word that uses the person who does it meaning? Like I teach, so I am a
Teacher.
good. And it also means more. So I am old, but my husband is?
Younger.
No, he's older. Okay, and how about for this? This one means without. Can you think of a word?
Homeless.
Excellent, without a home. So I will instruct, and at first I'm giving a lot of talking, and after a while I talk very little, and my kids will say less, as in homeless.
Yeah.
And Catherine, go for it.
10 and 18.
10 and 18.
Okay.
This makes words into nouns. So if we want to live together as one in the commune, we're going to live together as one. We would have a commune.
Community.
Good. If we want to live in a simple way, we want. I think you said
I'm
simplicity.
sorry, I can't.
Okay, so
I'm
simplicity.
just having terrible audio.
Yeah, I hear that. Okay, so, and this one, the suffix is an, and it means a person who, but here's the trick. If you add it with the ci, it sounds just like that other shun. So this is shun, but it means a person who. So a person who does magic is a magician, or a person who does music is a musician, whatever. So I'll go through and, take 5 minutes when we need a break. And I do a lot of low stress teaching. It's not the explicit instruction that we might do at some point, but it gets a lot out there. And because it's a game, the kids are happy to play it. And after a couple of times of doing this, I have kids that rattle through and know all the suffixes that I've introduced this way. And then I, pull up another set of suffixes or word endings or prefixes or roots or whatever.
Emily, that's what I'm finding right now, that just by playing the games, like they have to be familiar with these parts. And, sort of in a lot of the OG things, we're just taught to do one thing at a time, but it's just too slow, especially the older kids. Yeah. I'm having to group them together. So, I want to do things with fidelity and all of that. And I'm just thinking, this is not going fast enough. And
it's not going fast
play
enough.
A rummy root game or a game like this, they learn them so much faster. And so I'm glad that you're saying that.
Yeah. So it's not the explicit instruction. I'm not teaching all the words and the rules for using this one suffix or this one word ending or this one whatever. There's time for explicit instruction, but we need to take a little brain breaks anyway, a little change in pace. So I throw these in for that change in pace, just to break up the thinking. They think it's a game. They don't realize how much they're learning, but boy, man, they learn it so much faster this way. And I will get to that explicit instruction at some point, but this gives them the familiarity. And I know that the term exposing kids is a bad word in education. We're not supposed to just expose kids. We're supposed to explicitly instruct them. But giving them that introduction in a low stakes, high impact manner is very effective. I mean, I have some of my kids that would take forever going through the explicit curriculum. I mean, the rewards, the structures, any of those, it would take forever, but I can get them so that they know 30 suffixes very quickly. And that unlocks the door. They don't know every time they come to that suffix what it means in that word, but they're recognizing the suffix so that they're better able to decode the words. I don't like the ones the games where it's like, which suffix means condition of, which suffix means the quality of. That does not help you decode the word. I want my students to be able to decode the word so that when they see the T-U-R-E, they can say chur, nature, adventure, sculpture, whatever, because they've seen it enough times, they've worked with it, they'll say chur, and they're like, yeah, what does that one do? Did it make it a noun? Did it make it, whatever? But they've recognized it. It helps them to decode the word. I know that's counter to what we're taught about explicit instruction, but this is my brain break. And if you're going to take a brain break, I'm going to make it count towards helping my students. I do a lot of these, play a little game, play a card game. I do a lot of card games and these games that just change the pace and give that blast of introduction to a lot of things so they're familiar with it so that they can decode the words. I want them to decode. Here we go. Step 1, suffixes. Step 2. Nope, don't say anything. Step 3, vowels. 1, that E is silent. There. Placement. It's not placement. It's placement because I was aware of that suffix, and E, it's on your flowchart, and E in front of a consonant suffix is silent. Okay, here we go. Next one, I see a suffix. Step 1, suffix. Step 2, nothing. Step 3, vowels. I see a vowel in front of my consonant suffix. That I used to be a Y. I'm going to think of it as a Y. Happiness, right? And the Y said E, so the I says E, happiness. But if I said happiness, happiness, right, I would probably get to eventually connect it to happiness. And then I would point out that I used to be a Y. The Y represented the E sound, happiness. The I can say E. Here we go, consonant suffix. I see a prefix. Ooh, I see a second suffix, but even if I didn't, there. Let's see, letter teams. There we go. Vowels, 1, there. Oh, an E in front of a consonant suffix is silent. I'm not counting that there. So splitting it up. Well, I'm going to generally split between my prefix. Once you notice a prefix, generally we can split there. You know what? This one doesn't really matter whether I split in front of the R or after the R, unless the O-U-R can say but it's more often the ow, but we'll try it. There. And encouragement. Oh, wait. I knew the AGE suffix often says edge. Encouragement. That didn't work. What are the other sounds of the OU? Ow, oh. Encouragement. Oh, wait. That sounded very close to a word I know. Encouragement. Guess what? This is one. So we just want to get close enough to it sparks to where they recognize a word. But generally, encouragement, kids will hear encouragement and you'll say, yep, you know what? This word is the O-U-R saying You got it. Now, here's why we have to look at affixes before letter teams. Because I see this affix or est, I'm not connecting the IE. Do you see, if you did your vowel teams first, you would connect the IE and say that's either an E or an I. But because I'm looking at my affixes first, I'm not doing that. I'm saying, oh, I see a suffix est. Do I see anything else in there? No vowel teams. Step 3, vowels, vowel. An I in front of a suffix used to be a Y, happiest. I'm not saying happiest or happiest because I've noticed my affix before the vowel team. Suffix, I in front of it used to be a Y, right? Vowel. That vowel is pronounced reliable. And that I used to say Y. And here we go. We have the suffix 2 P's split in between, hopping. This one vowel, 1 consonant in front. The silent E was dropped. It was hoping. Here we already looked at these words. right? Consonant L was a syllable. So it's stumbling or stumbling, either way you say it. But here, and a consonant L can be a syllable all on its own. Recyclable. I see my ES. That one was added to make the word plural. What did it do? That was because we had a ES in front to make SH, CH, S, X, or Z words plural. So it's matches. Here, did I add the ES? Nope, there's no reason I added an ES to that one. What did I add? I just added the S. What did that E do? The E made the C say fences. So just going through the questions. ED. Oh, it's after a T. New syllable. Hunted. ED. It's after a T. Is it donated? Donated? Okay, when you have a single vowel, single consonant in front of a vowel suffix, the silent E was dropped. What did it do there? It made the A say A. So donated. Right? So one vowel, one consonant in front of a vowel suffix, the silent E was dropped. Here, ED, uh-oh. That one's not after a D or a T, but it is after consonant L. It's going to add to that syllable, right? So we have out, gam. We don't say bled. What does the sound of the ED? The sound is D. What's the sound of the BL? Bull, bold. That syllable actually has no vowel sound. Gam, bold. It's a consonant L with an ED added that does not have a vowel sound. So that's a syllable without a vowel sound. It has a vowel letter in there. Okay, are we okay on that? I know that was really fast. Was there anything there that you would have difficulty or your students would have difficulty with once you teach them to go through the process? Okay. I had questions on some of these. I'm going to go through these again. These I think I presented the last time. The X is a very odd letter. The X represents the sound K and S, right? K, S. That one letter is a consonant cluster. When we come to a word like this, I see the suffix us. And if you have a X in front of it, it's like a consonant, two consonants together that we're going to split up, just like we split consonants. So I'm going to do that. And I have something that sounds like ink. And then the SIOUS would say shus, anxious. So because X represents two sounds, when you chop consonants apart, you're chopping that one right in the middle. Okay. This word here, it looks like vowel. It looks like initiate. The trick is when you see words with a T-I-A-T-E or Asian or a C-I-A-T-E or Asian, the sound is really in, sh, e, 8. So we have a orthographic rule that we're not allowed to have two I's together. So we get rid of this I. So the sounds are inishi. The I is saying E. I often says E in front of a vowel. The T is saying sh all by itself. So when you're at this level, you tell kids to be aware of the T-I-A-T-Es or the C-I-A-T-Es or the shuns, initiation, appreciation, depreciation, all of those words. That sometimes the T can say sh all by itself. So in here, I see a suffix. Is this a sh and that a sh? Negotiation, negotiation. This is a word where this part here is really supposed to be like this, but I'm not allowed two I's together. So it's negotiation, but the T is saying sh all by itself. And when you have the S-T-I-O-N, we see the T-I-O-N saying shun, but we don't say question, because as you're going from a S to a sh, it comes out as ch. So the S-T-I represents the ch sound, question. Okay, so those are some of the oddities just to keep in the back of your mind as we deal with words, as you deal with words. Okay, and I just showing games, and we won't talk about stress and schwa. I have an explanation of schwa. Oh, this one is actually Pam Mellon's stress with talking about schwa, because she is a dyslexic teacher, and she talks about how hard it is for people with dyslexia to hear schwa. And I demonstrated on the last video how I teach stress and schwa, so you can look at that recording. Okay, and if you would go into the Jamboard, actually I think I've gone through most of that page, and go to frame number 3. Just add some words in here that we will work on together. Just use the text and add words in. Okay, if you could just first join me on frame 2. If you could navigate to frame 2, please. Okay. On frame 2, I have a couple of words here. We talked about recyclable. Done with that. Talked about this one. This is one that someone said was tricky. So vowel, vowel. Our first reaction would be to do that and say secret, right? Secret. Not a word that's in my memory. What's the next thing I do? If that doesn't work, the next thing is always to try a different split. So it would be secret. Okay, because that R can stay with its cluster. The CR wants to be pronounced together. So there's that. So when one doesn't work, when it doesn't connect to something that's in your lexicon, you try the other split. Okay. So this one is tricky, because a lot of kids will say, oh, I see coin. But remember the first step is to look for affixes. So I see an ence and I see a co meaning with or together, just like com or con. Oh, and if I just kind of cover those up, that's starting to look like a word I know. But let's look at it. Is this a letter team? Is that a sh? That CI? No, it's not a sh, because I can't have a sh in front of a d. So that's not a letter team. So now I can look at separate vowels here. The E at the end is separate. So separating it out. Okay. And because there's one consonant here, my first try would be to have in front. Co, in, psi or si, dense, coincidence, coincidence. That took me first step to a word that was in my lexicon, because I recognize the co as a prefix. If I don't recognize it as a prefix, I'm going to say coin, right? So first step, prefixes and suffixes. And I want to look at these two here. So these words are, they're just so alike, there's only one letter different, right? So if we're not paying attention to the structure of the word, what are we going to do? So I see a suffix. Oh, come on. I see a suffix. Okay, I see a letter T. Oh, maybe that's a prefix. Maybe that's a prefix. I'll try that. React, react, reached. No, that didn't work. So maybe that's not a prefix. Maybe it's the letter team. So try one, try another. Reached. Okay, here's my same suffix. No, I like the black better. Same suffix. I'm going to try that prefix again. Ah, the word that's in between is it's a free base, act. So I can have reacted. Okay. So at the beginning, I often tell my kids, cover it up. And if I'm covering up the RE and the ED and I see ACH, that's not a base I know. But if I cover them up and I see the ACT, that's a base. Okay. So it takes a couple of trials, but not an issue. The goal is to get kids to decode the word. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is if you go up here and expand your, I'm going to do it for you. Expand frame 3. We're going to duplicate it for, I don't know how many people there are, but just go and go to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, and put your name on a page, claim a page, and put your name on it. And you're going to pull those words and work on it. So find a page that has nobody else on it and put your name on it. So I want you on your own frame and then start pulling the words down and go through the steps. Step 1, 2, 3, and 4 to see, as your students would, to see about syllabicating these words. And I think I see 2 people on 7. Is that 2 of you on 7?
I think I'm on 7.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I thought I saw 2 icons on 7, but maybe there's just, I only see one person working. So beautiful. Nice job, Catherine. So sorry, if you're not familiar with Jamboard, you use the arrow to select and move things and use the pen, that's the top icon, to make marks. You can also just go into those words and put spaces if you want. I'm sorry, I didn't get to. And you can make the words bigger. Thinking is how you would have your students do this. Would they get to the pronounceable word following those 4 steps? Do you see any issues here? And that if one one vowel sound doesn't work, try it the other way. The word obnoxious, what's the odd thing in that word?
The X.
Yeah, that one gets split up, right? Into the k and then the S sound. The S going with the shus, obnoxious. How about digestion? What's weird in that word?
We don't know if the digest is the base word, ION is the suffix.
Yes. But if your
So-
student has never read this word before and they're having to decode the word, what
Then
would
we
you,
would do vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, and they'd probably divide it right there, and it'd be DIGES, divide TION.
so we would have di or die, just,
Just.
shun.
Mm.
So the odd thing is that the STI represents the ch sound, digestion. Okay. So words that end that have the S in front of the TION have the ch sound, represent the ch sound. How about in differentiation? Catherine, you marked the various affixes as ent and then ate and then shun or un, ION. But if you didn't know that, if our students aren't fully aware of the ent and the ate and the ION, would they be able to get to the pronunciation of the word? And the odd thing there is that the TI says she. So the T says sh all by itself. So when you see a TIA shun or TIATE, sometimes that TI says sh all by itself. Perimeters. The meaning is peri, around, meter, to measure. So perimeters to measure around, like a periscope. You look all around the ocean, 360 degrees, and meter means to measure. So perimeter is to measure around. But here, if you tried perimeter, not quite the right word. Perimeter, not quite the right word. Do you see that the R is between two vowels? It might be perimeter, eater. But at some point in going through that, most kids will get to say, oh, perimeter. Whether they say per-im-meter or perimeter, they will eventually get to perimeter or perimeter. We want just to get close enough that they are able to connect it to a word in their memory. Then they can develop recognition of the word and put it into long-term memory, perimeter. And I did not talk about stress and schwa today, but that was on the other. Okay. Anyone have any issues? Oh, did you try personification? I think it got, yeah, okay. Personification. Would your kids be able to get to this? Given those 4 steps, would your kids be able to read personification? Absolutely regular. Absolutely regular. There is not a trick to that word at all. And I actually tell kids that reading these longer words is easier than reading shorter words with the Anglo-Saxon basis, because the Latin influenced words tend to be more regular. And so you take a kid who has been stumbling and is feeling junk about themselves, and they realize that they can read personification. There's a lot of confidence building there. Is there anything else anyone wants to address? Any issue you had with following the steps to see why I look at affixes before letter teams and why letter teams before vowel sounds? Is that process, does that process make sense, that you have to notice your affixes before the letter teams? Yes, no? Thank you. I can't see everybody, but I saw one thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you, Kim. The goal, our kids need to be able to decode longer words, right? Giving them these 4 simple steps. And yes, you've been teaching phonics. They have to learn those spelling rules. They have to learn how to change words once they add suffixes on. And you generally teach that in, first grade, second grade, into third grade. But they have to know that that impacts the words they read up in the higher levels. So working backwards from those rules. So that's why there's that whole deal about what to do when you have suffixes. Okay. Are there any questions at this point? Okay, if you would join me on slide number, I'll go back to 2. When I have younger students, and we deal with a lot of kids who just have had issues and they're feeling really, life has been hard. When you can't read and you spend 8 hours or 6.5 hours a day in an environment that makes you feel dumb, it's really hard for some of our kids. And I will do an exercise with some of these kids where I'll say, okay, what are the sounds you hear in the syllable TAS? Let's just listen. What do you hear in TAS? And I'm going to pull up a sticky note. And as my student would, and they'd say TAS, T-ass. Perfect. Perfect. That's excellent. The sounds are T-ass. What are the sounds you hear in, sorry, wrong thing. In, let's say, fan. What do you hear in fan? And they'll say, fan. Good. And then I might say, okay, wait, what was this one? And they'll say TAS. And what was this one? Fan. Okay, which one was TAS? Oh, that was this one, right? Which one was fan? Right, good. Perfect. Let's try one more. What's the sounds you hear in tick? T, I, and I'll say, just use the regular old k, the C that says k here, because I'm not making the long word tick. I'm just using the sounds here. And they'll say tick, and they'll say good. And I'll say, wait, what was this one? Oops. And they'll say tick. And what's this one? Fan. What's this one? TAS. Perfect. Okay, what was this one? And what was this one? And what was this one? I was like, whoa, 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 wait, say it again. What was this? Fan, TAS, and tick. What was that? And you get a student to say fantastic. So at this point, they've only had to deal with 3 sounds at a time. They've only had to have a working memory of really 4 digits, 4 spaces, and they've been able to build a word. And you take a student who has struggled, and you give them the ability to see that. I've had kids that say, can you take a picture of that? I have to show it to my teacher. Can you take a picture of that? I have to show it to my mom. And we take a picture of the slide or whatever it is that we've done it in. And they'll go around and look and say, look, 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 look. I spelled fantastic. I read fantastic. I spelled fantastic. And I'll say, you are fantastic. And we know kids have so far to go. So sometimes going out of order, like if our students are just dealing with CVC, it's like, are you really going to, have them read fantastic? But sometimes it helps. Sometimes it helps. So I often do, as part of my lesson, at whatever level I am, we'll build a couple of multi-syllable words, and it helps not only get their mind thinking that syllables are combined to make longer words, but to help overcome that negative view that they have that they are not good students, they're dumb, they can't read. And success begets success. The more success we give our students, the more that they can be successful. So breaking it down in a way that gives them success. And rather than taking forever to get through the curriculum of introducing all the suffixes, 1 suffix every week, and it takes you the whole school year to get through 36 suffixes. Sometimes that break can give us success faster, or give the students success faster, and just to change that mindset so they can start to see themselves as, I'm someone who can attain this, I'm someone who can read. And that's really what we want. We want to find ways to give our students success. Right. And are there any questions?
Emily,
Yes.
I learned from you the continuous blending, and my student who was for 2 years, they just gave it to me because he got IEP, and then she thought reading is just segmenting, never got the habit of putting together and blending. Thanks to your instruction, I did make a slide, not your way, because your way I can't do it, it's very difficult. I just went through the slide, making a slide, and she continuously blending. Now she's able to blend, and now I wasn't sure if I can give her CVC words to put together to make bigger words so she would be motivated. I didn't know if I'm doing it right or wrong, but I think you're validating it, so I can do it.
I actually, because I work in sheets a lot, because that's the way I've developed it to make it easier for me. And then I've heard, and I would share it around to a bunch of teachers, and I've heard teachers say, like sheets, I can't deal with sheets. So I have made a bunch of slide decks, and they're on my TPT store, and they look like, let me just pull one up.
I spent the whole night. I started at night and I finished at 6 o'clock.
Oh my
Being
goodness.
able to learn the steps, but then it's still challenging for me.
So in a slide deck, let me just show you this. I have several of these where I have CVC, CVCC, CVCCs. I have a bunch of these. So it looks like this to help with the blending. So I'd say it together. Self. And it's amazing how fast kids can go once you just get their focus down to just putting the sounds together. So I'd say, I know you see this and you see the ah, but what are we going to say? We're not going to say it till we say it together. Soft. And when kids see that they're reading words with 4 letters, whereas they had trouble even doing k, at, it's like, wow, right? Right. So I do have some of these set up as slides, and they're very, very, very inexpensive on my TPT. So go and visit my TPT store if that's something that would be helpful. And I'm putting more out there, but I don't like selling myself, but I like making things available, and I'm in a situation right now that I have to do more. So so I do have things like that, and I'm so glad it was helpful for your students. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
No, I just want to say thank you, because a lot of the things you've said are just confirming, kind of how things are working with some of my students. So just confirming that, yes, it's okay to do it that way or this way. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah.